time once again to slip into your camo, grab your bow, and join us out in the field for another episode of the Up North Journal, presented by PSE Archery. The Up North Journal crew is knocked and ready to rock for another exciting adventure. So let's step outside and hit the trail.
This episode of the Up North Journal podcast is brought to you by PSE Archery,
Deer Camp Coffee,
Buck Baits,
JPO Game Calls,
The Island Armory,
Hacker Max,
Sunrise Archery,
and C3 Better the Hunt Technology.
Welcome back to another episode of the Up North Journal, everybody. Host Mike Adams sitting in the cabin tonight with a little bit of breeze blowing, 70-ish. Starting to feel like fall.
Right?
Got Dan DeFall sitting here tonight.
Tomorrow, goose opener.
It is. It is the goose opener.
I see Seven Lakes put out their notice.
Yes.
You get, I think, 2 days.
Yes.
And then they're going to close 3, 4, and 5
Yep.
for the holiday weekend.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, but tomorrow's the goose opener. So I guess besides yesterday started elk season. Jennifer Drake, I see, took a first-time hunter out.
And she got her cow elk.
Got a cow elk. So
yeah.
that was awesome.
Did you see the picture of her holding up the heart?
Yes, I did.
That was cool. That was good stuff.
But, it's starting. We're going to start rocking and rolling here, and we're going to get into it. And,
well, let's get into tonight's show.
Let's do that, and let's talk about our sponsors. Eh?
All right. Let's take care of people. Take care of us.
Absolutely. Real quick, folks, because we want to get to our guests as soon as possible. Buck Baits. You got to talk about Buck Baits. Get over their website, buckbaits.com. UNJ20 gets you 20% off your order. Check out their website. They put new stuff up all the time. One of our pro staffers went a little easy cut crazy out working his deer stands today.
Adam Scissorhands?
Yeah, Adam Scissorhands. Yes. If you use the promo code UNJ15 off at easycutproducts.com, you'll get 15% off your order. And it's not too late to give Lincoln Roan a call over at Packer Max. Get $25 off your Packer Max. Give him the code UNJ25. Oh, if it's hunting season, why not get a new gun?
There you go.
Go over to the Island Armory. Get 10% off your order when you check out UNJ10 over there. Like we talked about, goose season's tomorrow, deer season's coming up, squirrel season's coming up. Go to jpogamecalls.com, use UNJ10, you'll get 10% off your order. Why not go over to Deer Camp Coffee? We're drinking some Deer Camp Our Blend today. 10% off your order at deercampcoffee.com. Yes, they do have a pumpkin spice, so go check it out. Get 10% off your order when you check out over there.
So what live camera are you taking us to tonight?
Before we go there, real quick, you still don't have these slides. Like I talked about, if you want 20% off your next deer tracking, go over to Miller Deer Tracking. And tell him about us and use the promo code UNJ20. You'll get 20% off your next deer tracking event. And thanks to Zion down at Southern Indiana Bait Company, you get 10% off your order when you go check out their website. Use the promo code UNJ10 and you'll get 10% off your order over there. Now, going up to Newberry.
Going back to Newberry.
We're at 66 degrees.
Nice. Chilly. I like that. That's good hunting weather.
Deer Camp Coffee is served over cedars over there, so why not get a pizza and get some coffee with it from Deer Camp and have a great time up in Newberry.
Big shout out to FM 123 that carries the show up there for us as well. So, all right, we've been waiting for this interview for a long time, so I just want to get right into it and jump into it tonight.
He is kind of a legend in this state.
He is. None other than Chad Stewart, deer biologist, Michigan DNR. Chad, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right, fellas. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you taking the time out of your day. You're a busy guy and having you on the show tonight. We got a lot of good stuff to talk about tonight, and we have been anxiously awaiting what we're going to talk about tonight. You're just to kind of jump into this whole fray. I don't know, Danny, what was it, 3-4 years ago? I was really adamant about wanting this deer check system coming in.
Well, we've always been kind of in favor of a system here in Michigan that kind of was almost like that, right? We heard other states were doing it.
I had to do it in Illinois.
You did it in Illinois. Mark does it down in Indiana.
Yeah, I had to do it in Indiana, yeah.
Right? Other states have got this. Michigan was kind of lagging behind. And so we always talked about, it would be nice if Michigan had this. And lo and behold, through a couple years, this year is the first year that it's mandatory.
Yep.
And none other than having Chad Stewart on it to explain it to everybody, to get all the misnomers out of the way. And just so everybody knows, what he's going to talk about tonight is solely his interpretation and not the Michigan DNR. So,
is that right in saying that, Chad? Did we say that right?
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, I work for the DNR, so I'm gonna, like we were talking earlier, as a biologist that has responsibilities for managing a public trust resource like white-tailed deer, it's our job to defend the decisions or the recommendations that we make, and we knowing that not everybody's going to like them. So it's important for us to sort of get out and talk to people and appreciate like the forum that you guys allow us to come on to reach more folks to at least share sort of the information that we use to get to that point and make those recommendations. And some people will say, yeah, it sounds good and I like it. And some people will say, I don't believe you. I talked with a guy today that says, I don't believe anything that you're saying, but I appreciate you calling and talking to me. And that's cool too. But at least there's an opportunity and a conversation happening. That's what is important, is just continuing those conversations.
All right.
Absolutely.
So you actually will call people. I mean, like somebody will email you or text you or whatever, and you'll give them a call and you'll have a conversation
all the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, all the time. We get emails all the time. Sometimes they come into our sort of like a centralized DNR wildlife like email, and then it gets rerouted to us, and then we'll take the time to respond. A lot of times my name and number gets put out on press releases, so it's mostly meant for reporters to get, a little bit additional information to dive into things a little bit more and get maybe another quote or a little bit different angle on a story than beyond what the press release provided. But I'll have hunters just contact me and call me up and say, hey, I saw this and it doesn't make much sense. I need someone to explain it to me.
And it's got to be a nice feeling when your name's put on the piece of paper that you're the messenger. and you know what they do with the messenger. But before we get into the message, give us a little background into Chad Stewart. Where did you come from? How did you get to where you are today?
So I've been in my current position, which is here with the Michigan DNR, deer biologist. I've got some elk policy management responsibilities with my job as well. They're nice, and they put moose in there as well. We don't do a whole lot with moose, but I'm sort of the point person for that too. I've been in the agency now for 8 years. Before that, I came from Indiana. Same general position down there as their statewide deer biologist, and I was down there for about 8 years. So I've done about 16 years now of managing white-tailed deer in the Midwest between those two states. Before that, I was sort of working as a wildlife biologist, whatever they call it, like just sort of on soft money in Virginia for the Smithsonian Institute.
Okay.
They have a facility out there in Front Royal. We were doing a lot of white-tailed deer research there. We were working with some national park properties. We did some localized work within the facility there in Front Royal. Did some agricultural damage kind of research. So really sort of got my teeth cut on a lot of the deer work and in the deer world there for 3 years. And then before that, degrees at Penn State and Illinois. So sorry, I don't have any Michigan education experience either through state or Michigan University or University of Michigan, but that just might give other people another reason to maybe not like me.
Actually, I kind of want to say that's actually opposite for me. Knowing that you're not from here gives you an objective view of not being brought up in a certain mindset of the hunting or whatever your background would have been. Is like, well, this is the way we do it. I know you go to college, like you said, Penn State, Illinois. So now you come into Michigan and you take a look at the landscape we have here in Michigan and kind of do a little background of what went on in the state and how everything goes. So that gives you a fresh start.
Well, I think, and maybe in regards to the opposite side of the coin of that, what you're saying or maybe making reference to, some appointed people weren't from this state and have other maybe agendas where you are actually hired in to your position. And I would rather hire somebody that is more well-rounded and comes from different areas and has different disciplines, in their resume. I think that's a better fit.
So one of the things that really appealed to me about, like, when I was in Indiana and I applied for the Michigan job is the history of deer hunting in Michigan. So I grew up in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has a very similar roots. Sort of trajectory with deer hunting. It's like, I've been hunting deer since I was 12, and the only reason I started at 12 was back when I was younger. That was the earliest you could start in Pennsylvania. I was going with my dad a lot sooner, but we would always go to camp, for hunting. Yeah. And then, we would do out of state trips down into West Virginia and run a motel and have some property down there where we would hunt too. But, deer hunting in Pennsylvania is what I think was really similar to deer hunting in Michigan, probably in the 80s and 90s. And even today, it's like when I go back home for like the holidays, back home being Pennsylvania, I lived there in 20 years, but where my parents are, all you talk about, around that time is like how deer season went. And when I was living there, like that's what you talked about, like leading up to it, like how many deer you would go out and, glass fields in the evening, you would go to camp, everybody would, play cards the night before, the morning of, you're sitting there and, as the sun's coming up, the shots start ringing out and you're like, oh man, that one was close. That's probably, this person or that person down in that stand. And then, at that time you didn't have cell phones. So, you're just waiting until the end of the evening to see everybody come in and what they get, where now you can just kind of text people and be like, was that you? Did you shoot? What'd you get? So it was, I think a real similarity. And that was like really appealing to me about coming to Michigan, is that sort of familiarity. And of course I sort of bounced around and did some other things in other states, but that sort of historical aspect was really appealing to me and felt very familiar. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to come to Michigan.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. I do think there are a lot of like people I've talked to from Pennsylvania. Down south where my family's from in Alabama, it's not the same, but it is kind of the same. It's that family atmosphere, the lead up to the hunt. They hunt with dogs down there. They used to. I don't know if they still do. But it was just everybody gets revved up around it, around the hunting season. Yeah. So, but in different states, it's a little more subdued maybe. It just depends on how much state land there is versus private land. I think it's Ohio has, does not have a lot of state land, or maybe I'm thinking of Indiana. I know it's down the Hoosier National Forest, but to the north, it's a lot of private. So Michigan, Pennsylvania the same way. They got a lot of state land as well.
Yeah, it's sort of interspersed. It's much more like Michigan, where especially as you get further up north, you get a lot more of the state forest, national forest type stuff. But even down south in the state where I was at, within a short drive, there's state forests all around. And we had a cabin in one location where it was obviously privately owned, but all around it was state forest. So you're just you go to the cabin and you spend the first couple weekends there leading up to the season, just sort of getting your blinds ready and whether it's shooting lanes, scouting. And my God, Pennsylvania had so many deer back in the 80s and 90s. It's just a matter of sitting on a stump and basically waiting for something to come around. But it was still like really exciting, and especially as a kid, going out for the first time as 12 or whatever. It was being one of the guys and going out. That's just, I don't know, like I've heard the stories of, how, hunters would and still do go, up north to camp, or whether it's in the UP or in the Northern Lower or whatever. And it was just very reminiscent for my experience, as a hunter growing up too.
I'll never forget my first opening day when I was 14. We hunted public land, and you know what that's like. but I remember it. It was exciting. But I tell you, we're getting real close here to our first break, and I want to save as much time as we can to talk about.
The questions are rolling in.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions coming in, a lot of comments. So let's step outside. We take our first break. We come back. We're going to jump right into this new rule that we have for reporting our deer harvest. So we'll step outside. We'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has reinvented the way you buy bows.
From now on, you can make the most educated decision possible
by basing your bow choice specifically on your shooting needs and goals.
All you need to do is ask yourself, what kind of shooter am I? What do I want to achieve?
PSE will help find the right category for you.
So, what kind of shooter are you?
Find out at psearchery.com.
All right, we're back. Second segment of the show. We talked about our inner 12-year-old in the commercial break.
So and that just for everybody out there that's listening on the podcast, you got to go check out the live Facebook broadcast, or in a couple of days you'll see it on YouTube. Go check it out, because things happen in the break that you don't hear about because you're listening to the billboards that are being played. So go back and watch it.
There you go.
And then you can see what Mike really looks like.
Yeah, thanks.
But, as we get into this with the new mandatory deer check here in Michigan, could you give just like an overview of what needs to be done by a Michigan hunter if they are successful starting this year?
Sure. Yeah. So, I think everybody's familiar with, when you go out, you buy your license, you buy your tags, whatever. Pick up a hunting digest if you can even find one, because they've been a little bit more sparse to locate recently. But anyway, you figure out like what you need to be legal. You got your tags, you go out, you got a deer come in front of you, you shoot it, you find it, everybody's happy, it's great. You put the tag on it. And once you put the tag on it, historically, your requirements are filled, right? That's the last thing that you really need to do. And everything beyond that is just sort of what you do from a personal standpoint. Butchering, if you got a nice one, whether it's a skull cap or a shoulder mount or a Euro mount or whatever. So now you've got one more step to do. And that is basically to, within about 3 days, 72 hours, get yourself to a computer. We've got a mobile app now for iPhones or smartphones, I guess I should say, that you can download. And then we're asking you to report your deer through that system, whether it's the online website or the mobile app. And if you're not good with sort of that type of technology, you can also call someone, whether it's a friend, family member, whatever, and have them report it for you. You just need to give them a little bit of information to help them get through that process. It's not too difficult, though. Whole process shouldn't take more than about 5 minutes for most people. And certainly as you start reporting more than one, it'll go even faster because you start getting familiar with the system. But once you get that report completed, it's going to send you a confirmation number. And then that confirmation number sort of signals your last step that you have to do to report your game and have your deer ready to go and do whatever you normally do with a deer that you take.
So when you get that confirmation number after going through all these steps, what do you do with it?
So that sort of serves as your piece of information that you've got that finalizes it. If you're dropping your deer off to a processor or a taxidermist, they might be asking you for it.
Should you write it on the tag?
It's one way to do it. You can definitely do it that way. That might be easier. The other thing that's nice about the mobile app on the smartphone, you can click on the actual tag that you have purchased because you've got your own little profile there and everything's linked to it. And you can report it through that piece right there. And it's sort of e-stamp at that point once you have it done and it's taken care of. It'll also send you an email with the confirmation number. So if you've got your mail system on your phone, a mail app or whatever, you can have that. So anytime a conservation officer would ask you, for your confirmation number or anything like that, you can pull it up easily. They'll check it against their system and make sure that everything lines up and you'll be good to go.
Okay. So now with this whole system, what are some of the questions? What are they going to ask us information for when we fill these harvest reports out?
Yeah, it's primarily based on the location and the specifics of the deer that you're taking. So, the first question is, what day did you harvest the deer?
Okay.
So you click that, you check that, and that's, exactly what you do on your harvest tag. We're asking you county or DMU, depending on what you're at. Sometimes if you're in the lower peninsula, they're a lot of times the same. So
okay.
You won't have to answer the second one. If you're in the upper peninsula, they aren't the same. So you might actually have you sort of answer both of those questions.
Gotcha.
Type of deer, antlered, antlerless. And then from there, it's going to sort of direct you into one of two ways. If you're an antlerless deer, we're going to try to answer specifics or ask you a specifics. Is it a button buck? Is it a doe? Is it a shed antlered buck? Is it a buck that has 3-inch spikes or less? We're trying to dive a little bit deeper into what the antlerless harvest is, which if you've ever seen a report from Michigan, we've never done that before.
Right.
So we only classify it as antlerless or antlered. Now, because of this system, we can dive a little bit deeper into which antlerless deer is being harvested and start getting generated information and estimate based on that.
Okay.
If you choose an antler deer, we're going to ask you how many points in the left rack, on the right rack, things if it's like broken, that would affect the point numbers on each antler. And that's about it. Oh, I think we have you seen a feral hog when you've been hunting question, because that's it's an invasive species. It's not something we're looking to get established here in Michigan. So we know that they're out there.
You just want to know where they're at.
You want to know where? Do you ask for the location if you've seen one?
We asked for contact information, basically.
Okay.
If you can tell us where they're at, because that's something that we don't want feral hogs in our state. And what better way to sort of conduct surveillance for feral hogs than to ask potentially 300,000 successful hunters here in Michigan, that have been all over the state. So, let's take advantage of that. And this is a question we've been asking our check stations for years. Yeah. And then we kind of rotate between one of, I think 4 or 5 different random questions that not everybody's going to get, or people are going to get different ones. We could ask a question on, what does the master acorn crop look like in your area? So we're trying to develop estimates for that. Okay. Some people might get, how did you harvest your deer, or what equipment did you use? And it's basically, did you use a shotgun, a rifle, a bow, a crossbow, a muzzleloader, stuff like that. Okay. So, and again, not everybody gets that question. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones now. I have them memorized now that I'm on the spot.
So you also have 72 hours to do this, correct?
Correct. It's a 72-hour window. Yep.
So with that being said, that 72-hour window, you're hoping somebody that's decided they wanted to canoe into the abyss of the Upper Peninsula and don't have cell signal in the middle of nowhere, they have time to come out or get to a spot where they could actually get to it. One of the questions coming in is, with this app and mandatory deer check, is there going to be more or less deer check stations around the state, or are those going to start to kind of dissipate with this going online?
Yeah, and that's a great question. Yeah, I would anticipate fewer check stations, compared to what we've had in the past. The caveat there is we have always understood the value of check stations in terms of having biologists and hunters interact together. And that was a great location and resource for that to happen. And that's something that we're still going to value. It just won't be in that traditional check station format. So, we've talked to our biologists and our technicians and our staff about trying to get creative with other ways that they can interact with hunters, whether it's before season, during season, whatever sort of makes the most sense. Might be showing up more to buck polls and talking to folks there. Might be hanging out at big retail stores and answering questions, talking with folks there. So we're going to rethink how we have engaged previously, because in the past, the check stations have been great for having hunters that come in, but a lot of times we've been running them for so long, it starts to become inefficient to staff some of those locations. Opening day, the first 3 days or whatever, going through the first weekend is always great because you always have a lot of hunters busy. It's fantastic. It's wonderful. But man, you guys, by the time you get to the second Tuesday, if we're still staffing it, we're paying people there to talk to 10 people, on a Tuesday or Wednesday. And it's just not an efficient use of our funds or time, when we keep them open for that long.
Well, that's one of the things I was going to say is I know one of the two populous, when I'm coming home from Crystal Falls, depending on when I'm traveling, if it's prime time, I know when you have the deer check station at the bridge and right down here,
here in Clio.
Yeah, is it Clio here at this rest stop?
Yeah, right here at the one.
Yeah, those seem to be the two busiest ones.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of whether you're checking your deer or people have just pulled over into the rest stop and just are watching the deer come through, which is kind of neat to see. But obviously with the times that we're in, cost cutting or watching how you spend your budget and all that's playing into this. And obviously with the age of electronics that we have, because it seems everybody's got one.
Yeah.
I think, like you said, watching how you spend your money for better means, right?
Well, going along with the lines of the check station, and it led me to think of number one, the check station, but also when I took my first buck, I brought it up to the parking area. I was hunting state land, and DNR officer pulled in. I was waiting on my ride. My dad and his buddies took off and left me in the woods by myself. And here I am with my deer waiting on them to come get me. But he come up and, he congratulated me and checked my deer out and everything. So with the officer in the field or at a check station, could you use that? Would the officers be able to give you that harvest, report that harvest at that point? Or is that not going to be available with the officer?
Yeah. Yeah, so this first year, we're going to have staff assisting with some of the harvest reporting. So like a lot of our DNR offices all over the state will be open, staffed. So hunters can go there, either learn how it's done, which is honestly the preferable way to do it, because we want to teach people and get them self-sufficient. We understand that this is a brand new system. Everybody's going to take some time to learn and understand how this thing works. And if you're really struggling with it, I think our staff will assist you with the actual reporting piece. Okay. So there is that piece, and that's something that our director is very committed and passionate about, making sure that we're there to help folks report their deer. And it's also worth noting that the direction this year has been education over enforcement. I know I'm not looking at your chat or your comments. I'm guessing that's in there somewhere, because it's what I hear every week since this is sort of rolled out. That right. What is the penalty going to be? And it's important to note that this year we're really focusing on education rather than enforcement, because this is brand new for everybody.
And that is one of the questions is exactly that. So how will
nonconformist?
How will it be checked that the so-said person did not check their deer in?
Well, there's no, unless they get stopped and then an officer checks it, and it's past the 3-day mark. I don't really understand. This is basically on an honor system, isn't it?
So everybody should be tagging their deer, right? They're putting it that's not a new thing for
right.
Michigan hunters.
that's not new this year.
Everybody's tagging their deer. So if someone gets stopped and is asked by a conservation officer, have you reported your deer? Then you have to sort of provide that confirmation. If you don't have that confirmation number, the officer is going to still be able to look at the tag on your deer and see if there's a confirmation number associated with it. Right. So there's the confirmation number is the link between the report and then the harvest tag on your deer. So, don't anybody go out there and say, oh, I reported my deer, and you didn't, to a law enforcement officer, because they'll be able to check and confirm, because they'll look at your tag and make sure that there's a confirmation number associated with it.
Well, exactly, and that's what we want to kind of also tell people. Look, if you get stopped and checked, just be upfront whether you have or have not, and just deal with it.
I think the most common place it's going to be is they do checks at taxidermists, and they do them at butcher shops, and I think that's going to be the two easy places for them to find compliance, I would assume.
Yeah. And so one of the reasons that we're doing this within 72 hours transfer possession to like a processor is so those processors get those confirmation numbers. So now instead of the processor reporting like the tag number, they'll report the confirmation number. We know in Michigan that about half of the deer that are taken in the state are going to a commercial processor.
Okay.
So if a processor is taking the confirmation number, in theory, we should be getting 50% compliance right off the bat and understanding what's going on. So we looked at, Mike, I think it was Alabama. I'm trying to remember now, it might be Mississippi, but I think it was Alabama, did not require a confirmation number. Their compliance was down in like the low 30% range.
Yeah.
And once they required a confirmation number, especially for the processors, compliance jumped up to about 80-some%.
Okay.
So what that does is it gives us a much better understanding, sooner in the timeline of what the deer harvest is going to be, as the season goes on, rather than getting this low compliance number that, still isn't going to tell us a whole lot, especially these first couple years. And I think I hope hunters are really going to see the benefit about having this harvest information sooner in the calendar year, rather than the way it's always come out in the past, which is usually like June or maybe even July.
Right. It'll be quicker and earlier in the next year. Hopefully, when the seasons end, we'll get back to what you need to see and get it out to the public. And we're coming up onto our second break. And when we come back, we're going to keep our talking about the new system here in Michigan and see what's happening with a little bit of parts of it going on. So
I got a couple questions specifically that I want to answer. All right, we're going to step outside, take our next break. We'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has always dominated the speed category. Now, the most revolutionary cam system ever to hit the market has perfected the shooting experience. Introducing PSE's Evolve Cam System, featuring extremely high let-off capabilities and the smoothest draw cycle in history. No other cam system has ever delivered this level of total comfort and total control. Experience PSE. Experience performance.
All right, third segment. We're back from break. We've been talking about what you need to do to get your deer harvest reported this coming year. Now, the one thing that I saw online, Chad, and I'm going to bring a picture of it up here. It's one of the slides that you give me. I got to find it real quick.
So while Mike's looking for it, I downloaded the app.
Okay, you got it.
And you can. I don't remember what my login is for my account, but once I sign in, I'll just be able to go through it and do what I need to do. Like Chad said, I can get various other information on me. So that answers the question. It's linked. If you set up your account, you'll go right in. You'll be able to see your licenses and everything that you got.
Good.
So it took a minute.
So I've got the slide up right now, and it's got the location. Now, everybody says GPS location. I'm not giving you a GPS location of where I've shot my deer at. No way. It's intrusion of privacy, blah, 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 blah. What's the gist of this? I mean, you've got a map up here. What are we supposed to do with this?
Yeah. So one of the things we're asking, and man, if I had a nickel for every time I've had somebody ask about this, we are asking you to sort of move a dot around on the map and basically place the pin, to your best estimate where you took that deer.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple reasons we're asking that. One is because we're trying to tie the online harvest reporting piece to disease surveillance, whether it's bovine TB, CWD. So if we have a better understanding of where deer are being killed, taken, whatever term you guys use, on the landscape, then we have a much better understanding of where the disease is accurately going to exist. The other piece to this that I think is important is that counties and deer management units, they are not the same, north to south, east to west, right?
Right.
That is how we're managing them because it's easy to communicate. But you start looking at some places, and there's some pretty significant differences that occur. So our thought is if you're able to sort of build a distribution of take over time, where deer are being killed over time within a county, it gives us an opportunity to do a lot more sort of fine scale management within those boundaries, maybe along more of a landscape level rather than sort of a county political boundary, jurisdiction or whatever. So we're looking at this also from a potential benefit from a management standpoint, because right now, if we have a recommendation for a county, it might be like the Goldilocks story. It might be too much in one part of the area, too little in another part of the area. In some parts, it might be, or for the whole county, it might be just right.
Gotcha.
But if we can tease that out a little bit, we can try to customize our regulations a little bit more to account for some of those areas that we might start seeing declining trends. So now I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys and blow smoke and say that we're going to start managing deer at like a township level, because it's probably too small of an area to go down to. But if we have confidence in where these dots are being placed, we'll have a little bit more understanding of maybe some of these trends that might be changing within a county one way, but might be masked by the overall county, take numbers, over time. So there's that piece too. The other piece that I think is important to point out, and you guys can look this up, it's under Michigan combined law. So it's like a state law. I think it's like 15.243. 243 is like one of my favorite rifle rounds, so it's easy for me to remember. But it actually protects the exact location of where game is either identified or harvest locations are taken when you're able to put a point on a map. If you go more general than that, then that information can actually go through the Freedom of Information Act and be requested. But if it's an exact point on a map, it's completely protected by that law.
Okay. All right.
So there you go. That answers one of the most interesting questions out there is, just like Mike said, I'm not going to tell them where I shot my deer.
Well, this is what I equate it to. And I go back to me stopping at the deer check station with my deer every time that I've been able to get one. And you get out the map book and they say, okay, what county are you in, what, township and all that. Okay, what section area are you in? And I look and I'm like, I'm either in, because our property's divided either 12 or 13, depending on where I'm at, what end of the property I hunted. You're marking within a square mile, people. You know, and if it's that close, if you're willing to do that, and you're going to put a dot somewhere. But my question is, how many, honestly, Chad, how many deer do you think you're going to find were harvested in water somewhere?
Oh, last year I think we had at least one deer that was down in Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Lake Michigan, like the amount of deer taken in Lake Michigan or Superior is going to be high,
Yeah.
So like we know that that's going to happen, and honestly, if someone throws a dot in Lake Michigan, like we're obviously just going to throw it out.
Right.
We'll also be able to tell. Because if you say, like, I'm hunting in, say, I'm just going to pick Alpena County because it's the top,
Yep.
and the dot starts in the middle of Alpena County.
Yep.
If you choose not to, like, move that pin around and try to give us information, we'll be able to tell if you don't move that pin around either. So
Gotcha.
we can sort of tease that out. And that's honestly more preferable than giving us bad data.
Well, that's it, right? If you're gonna if you're gonna play that role of I don't want to tell you where I shot my deer because it's my deer, just give a general location in the general area, because like you said, most of the DMUs, how they're blocked out, you can go into 041, bring that up, look at all the pins, and maybe there's more to the southern than there is to the northern portion, and that's what you guys need to know. And that's better than nothing.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. And you just sit there and it boggles the mind sometimes when you get into these conversations, and just like this one, I'm not going to tell you where my deer is, and then they come around and they say, oh, the DNR, you guys, rank. And it's like, okay, they're trying to do something here, but yet you don't want to help them. So what do you want them to do?
So, and this is the biologist in me sort of perspective. It's like, why? This is the first year we're rolling this out, right? So why wouldn't we try to get that level of detail, that resolution, that information? Because if we can get it, it opens up a lot of doors. Now, if people don't want to give us that information, we'll figure that out within maybe even a year, but probably a couple years, and realize that, like, look, this isn't going to work. But that's also going to limit some of the things that we are able to do moving forward. Mm-hmm. And again, that's fine if that's like a line in the sand for a majority of hunters, and we can't get that information. But at least we can say we tried at one point do that.
Right.
And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work.
Okay, so looking ahead, you talked about opening doors. Looking at, let's say everything kind of rolls out smoothly this year, you have great success with this. What can we as hunters expect to get back in return from y'all in data that's going to satisfy our appetites of what we're looking for?
Yeah. So right now I'm looking at this as like a treasure trove of data, that some of the stuff that we have not been able to get before. And because of that, we'll be able to make decisions that will either increase opportunities for hunters, whether it's some of the equipment choices that they can use, whether it's some of the management, decisions, directions. It could be quota related. It could be, I'm trying to think of some of the other stuff that I was thinking of, expansion of we'll know the impact of some of these things a lot more. Season lengths, either expansion, reduction, we'll be able to sort of evaluate these things more on a finer scale. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I think, and this is, I don't know, I'm obviously a kind of a deer data nerd guy, because I wouldn't be in this job if I wasn't. I'm assuming you guys have some level of that too, because
just a little.
you can't have like 659 episodes and not have like be interested in some of the data, right? But like we're gonna develop this. We're calling it a dashboard, but it's basically something that's going to be updated really, every day. Honestly, every hour, because it's going to be real time. But you'll be able to see how the harvest changes over time, both for antlered and antlerless deer, county by county, as the days sort of tick on. So we've never had that information before. Like, I can't tell you how many times someone like the media, called me up and asked me like, how's the season going? And I'm just like I don't have data to support it. Like, I know what I hear from people, and I know like what my own experiences is, in my small little area that I hunt. But, from a statewide perspective, I don't have data to support that. But man, now once we start getting to some sort of like plateau and we get consistency with reporting over time, I'll be able to tell you exactly how the season's going. Man, archery season's up like 8%. This area over here is seeing more deer. This area is seeing, more bucks being killed than last year. these are all things that we can talk about in season and immediately after the end of the season, rather than having these conversations in like June and July when the harvest report is done and nobody cares what happened 6 months ago. Everybody's looking forward to like the future.
Well, so with that being said, about gathering the data, one of the questions out there is, let's say the UNJ crew, all 4 of us, 5 of us go out hunting, we all get a deer. Now the app is, you have to have an account to go in and do your registration, right?
Yes, yeah, you'll link up to your tags. Yeah.
So then to answer the question, if we have 5 deer, we have to go into the 5 different accounts that we have, one for each of us, to register each deer.
If you're going through the app, yes.
Okay.
If you're going through just the website, the mi.gov/DNR harvest report website, all you're doing is typing in the tag number, which each one of those 5 of you or 4 of you have a unique tag number that you're putting on your deer. That tag number is assigned to you.
Yep.
So just to confirm that it's assigned to you, you have to put your date of birth in. So there's 5 different dates of birth that are going to correspond to the tag number that each one recognizes, and then you can do that. So if you guys are in a remote area in a cabin and somewhere in the UP, and you all kill on the first day, within the next day or 2, you can just have someone run into town, pick up a self-service or whatever, and go through and report all the deer for everybody at one time while you're filling up your tank, while you're getting, chicken at the store or, drinks from the store or whatever to bring back to camp.
Okay, so that's good. That's good. There's other ways. It's just not, if I'm doing it through the app, I got to be logged in. But if I do it through the computer, I can do it
exactly
more than one,
yep.
which is good. That's a good thing.
But I'm going to play devil's advocate because I just like doing this kind of stuff. And I've seen this out there more than once. Talking to people about non-compliance and making excuses. The time's not enough or what have you. I don't have a cell phone. What are you going to do about the Amish community?
Yeah. So
that's a real deal.
Absolutely. We've run some numbers. First of all, we know that there's Amish community spread throughout, like all of Michigan. Doesn't make up, as you imagine, very much percentage of the hunters. I mean, it's a small fraction, but we still need to be inclusive of those individuals and individuals with those beliefs. What we've done is talked with biologists in those areas to basically try to identify some of those communities, reach out and basically be like, listen, we know that there's, communities here. We know that a lot of you hunt. We would like to try to engage with you and assist you with some of these reporting measures that we've had in the past. We're also going to try to obviously talk with those communities that there's, while their beliefs might prevent them from utilizing some of this technology, certainly they can communicate to people outside of that, outside of their community to help assist them with reporting those harvests, those eggs. So we recognize that this is going to be a shortcoming, but we're also committed to try to make those efforts to reach out individually to those communities, trying to maybe find one person that can be a point person and representative, that maybe everything can sort of flow through so we can help facilitate those reports a little bit easier. I think it's important to point out that we are probably the last state in the Midwest to adopt this technology.
Yeah.
And listen, like, other states have Amish communities too.
Yep.
It does not seem to be a barrier to any of those other states. So we're pretty confident that we can overcome some of these things.
So with this new real-time data coming in, you'll have it to the end of the seasons. Do you think this will change the response time of enacting different regulations? Will it be right, since you have this information, you'll have more months ahead to study it, so that then the following year you're actually going to be more reactive quicker?
Oh, Dan, I know which road you're leading me down. That's okay. I'm ready for it. But
I was trying to word it right. So because
no,
I think I know what your answer is. It's just you get this information in February. You've got 3-4 months to look over it, and then you're going to make recommendations. They're going to come down. And you're going to have all that conversation. But are we going to see a year-to-year change quicker, I guess?
Yeah, so we're still going to be trying to commit to what we call our 3-year deer reg cycles, okay? So we don't want to go in every year and tweak deer regulations. I'll tell you that in my 8 years being here as a deer biologist in Michigan, we have been doing that. And there's various reasons for that I won't go into, but the overall desire that was established before I got here, and I'd like to try to keep, is like we set a set of regulations, we monitor it for 3 years and give it some time to run its course, and then we evaluate it. But to your point, Dan, yes, because on those deer reg cycle years, we're almost a year behind with our recommendations because for people that don't know, we have to propose recommendations, we being the DNR, through what's called the Natural Resources Commission, which is an independent group of 7 individuals that have been appointed by current and previous governors to take into account, our science, our recommendations, as well as public input that might be supportive or opposed to it, and either approve or not approve those recommendations. That always happens in the spring and summer. So It's usually like a May to June, at the latest July timeframe. But in order to build those recommendations, we need to start looking as early as like February and March. And we don't have the previous year's hunting data until probably about June or July. So it's not like we can develop this on the fly. We can make amendments and try to tweak things if we think something's grossly inaccurate. But a lot of times we're working with data that doesn't even account for the previous season's hunting data. With this system, we should be able to do that. Now, next year, I don't know, because I don't know what this year is going to bring in terms of what we're going to get.
Like you said, this is the first year, right?
Yeah, but as we go forward, absolutely. By January 1st, January 2nd of every year, there's 3 counties in the Southeast that are still doing archery hunting, but through the end of January. But for the most part, we'll have most of the data complete, or at least a good estimate of what things are that we can use right away to start having those conversations internally with stakeholders and determining direction for next cycle's regulation.
So with that being said, with Michigan coming on board as one of the last to adopt this type of method of reporting, you've studied other states, and now Michigan is going to be the best, most foolproof, bulletproof, whatever you want to call it, system for the Great Lakes area, right?
No pressure, right?
No pressure.
Well, Chad, going back to what you said just a minute ago about Danny thinking of what he was going to ask you, you and I talked about this before the show, and there's been a lot of heat on this. There's been a lot of talk about it, and you guys have been blasted. And I see what you're saying now, but it's about that data coming out. All of a sudden, regs come out and then the data comes out. But you're hoping that this system with the 3-year cycles, that you can take your 2 years and that 3rd year when you're making these new recommendations, you get that done before they actually make that year's recommendation. Am I right? Did I say that right? Oh, I think we lost him.
Nope.
Oh, are you there? You there, Chad? Nope, we lost him. Okay, I tell you what, folks, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to reconnect with Chad, and we'll be right back after this.
Acceleration is part of PSE's DNA. PSE pioneered the speed movement. Now they've developed the vapor category to help you find the most powerful bows on the market to fit you.
High speed equates to intense power and building the momentum you need to be successful. Are you a vapor shooter? Find out at psearchery.com.
All right, we've got reconnected with Chad here. He's back online with us, and we're kind of in the middle of asking a question and making a statement at the same time. So, Chad, let's just pick it right back up there where we were at. But what I was kind of getting at is you and I had talked a little bit before the show prior, and we talked about this subject, and I think it's kind of what Danny might have been alluding to, is our cycles of 3 years. We get data for 3 years. You guys make a recommendation to the NRC. Then they make their final determination on what they're going to do and implement. With what happened this year is the data came out a couple weeks after the NRC made their recommendations of what they're going to do. And a lot of hunters, a lot of organizations are like, they're ticked off. They're mad because it's like, well, all of a sudden, all the data didn't go into this year's plan. What happened? But what you're saying is possibly now we'll get 2 years of data. That 3rd year, when you're going to make the recommendation, that data will be in early enough that you can include that and have everything up to date going to the NRC. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, we should be working off of, in the future, we should be working off of the most recent year's data, as well as obviously everything before that, when we go into making our recommendations. And previously, because of the time delay, because of how we've always estimated harvest or take, whatever you guys want to call it. It's a lot of times we don't have that last year's worth of data. So it's not necessarily the end of the world, because unless something is extremely like an outlier, like maybe we have like an EHD year, or we have like a really bad winter in the UP that is going to change things up there, we try to make our recommendations based off of trends rather than like a singular point.
Right.
But, you also don't want to eliminate that last year, that most recent point, if it's kind of significant or substantial. That needs to be included in the discussion. And a lot of times we haven't had that available to us. So, we're kind of working off of 2 years of data and what we think happened pretty well last year when we make our recommendations. Now we should have all 3 years worth of data. And, there's the UPs can still be tricky. And, obviously you guys are up North Journal. So, when we're making these recommendations, winter drags out a long time in the Upper Peninsula. So we still have to have some sort of ability to flex, our recommendations, because if something happens in April or even May, that could dramatically change, what things are going to look like for the deer herd up there.
Absolutely.
So we have to build that sort of flexibility in somehow.
Worst 2 months are March and April. I get really nervous. I just keep watching the weather and hope it breaks up there. And
for sure.
You just, like Mother Nature can be great, or she can be real cruel. Okay,
Absolutely.
So, question. Do you foresee baiting coming back to the Lower Peninsula?
I'm going to give you the DNR's, I guess, response on that. And basically that is, I don't see our agency recommending a return for baiting in the Lower Peninsula.
Okay.
That's a different answer than whether or not I think it's going to come back. So I don't see us recommending the return of it, but whether it comes back or not, I don't have that crystal ball.
But people got to remember, the DNR is not the one making this final decision.
Well,
it's the NRC.
They make the recommendations.
They make the recommendations.
So it would be up to they're obviously, like you said, the NRC is the final say. And poor Chad's in the present the data, and sometimes he gets kicked right in the teeth.
Right.
And I get it, because I'm in that position. I know data should drive everything, but the reality is it doesn't always get taken.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question on the future here of what you think may or may not happen. Looking at the Northwest 12, we had APRs up there, and they seem to be doing well. It was embraced. We had a raised ratio of doe to buck kill ratio. And now that 3-year moratorium or that test, or whatever you want to call it, experiment, has been taken off the board now. Do you foresee that coming back in any shape, way, or form within the state?
All right. So let me correct you real quick there, Mike. So the Northwest 12, where we have APRs, and there's actually 13 counties up there because we've got Leelanau County as well.
Okay.
Those antler point restrictions remain for this year.
Oh, they do remain for this year. Okay.
They do remain for this year. So Leelanau is sort of on a separate timeline, but the Northwest 12 was instituted. Gosh, someone's going to call me out on this because I'm probably going to get it wrong.
It's been a while. It's about the 12-13 time frame. And then they went through the 4 to 5 year evaluation period, came back with high levels of support for keeping it. So essentially the sunset was removed for those 12 counties. So those 12 counties are basically in for APRs. And, we have right now no reason to touch them at all. Why was there such talk about that then?
So what you're referring to are the 3 counties where we had a CWD APR experiment going on. So what you're hearing about is Mecosta, Montcalm, and Ionia counties.
Okay.
They had antler point restrictions incorporated 3 years ago as part of a response to the then commission wanting to evaluate basically if APRs and we're good for CWD, essentially, because we have CWD in Montcalm County. We've picked it up in northeastern Kent County. There's a few positives in Ionia County. So the commission at that time knew that antler point restrictions were such a hot topic amongst our Michigan hunters. They knew that chronic wasting disease was a big deal based on everything that the biologist in state and out of state have been telling them. They knew that there had to be something done to see how those two pieces like interact, right?
Work together. I got you.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Like, can these two things coexist? So the commission at that time requested a study be placed. We put in antler point restrictions. I think it was 19, 20, and 21, those 3 years. And we looked at harvest. We looked at, like you said, the ratios between antlerless and antler, basically trying to determine and understand if hunter behavior changed as a result of having those antler point restrictions in place. That study was always meant to be a 3-year study. Okay. So go for 3 years. And again, we were up front with the commission at this time when this was developed, like, listen, like the 3 years are going to happen and we can't turn data around that quickly. We need some time to evaluate things. So there's going to be some sort of gap between the 3-year study with the regulations and basically a recommendation on what to do with that data. Okay. And that's where we were this past summer. So the commission, was it last year or 2 years ago, they basically applied a sunset to those 3 counties with the antler point restriction. So basically the way a regulation works is you propose it and it goes in, and then if you want to get rid of it, you make the proposal to go in and have it removed. What the commission did a couple of years ago was apply a sunset, which basically they basically set a deadline that basically after
the end date,
after the end of 21, they will go away, and that's the action. We don't have to revisit this again. It goes away, and that will give the agency and the university researchers time to evaluate that. So first couple years, really positive response in terms of antler to antlerless harvest ratio. Hunters clearly responded. We fully expected that in the first year. 2020 was a year like none other. Right. But we had a lot of hunters participating in 2020 because of those circumstances. So
did that skew your data?
It limited what we could do, because basically the data that we're looking at is not just the harvest data, but we've selected, I think it's 4 pairs of townships, either in what we call our control or our treatment areas. A control being where there's no APRs, or treatment where we're treating the area with APRs. And we're putting cameras out all over those townships and trying to get an understanding and an estimate of what we call relative abundance, like basically how many deer are in those areas, fawn to doe ratios, number of like estimates of young bucks to old bucks, how many bucks we're seeing that would qualify for antler point restrictions, and seeing how that changes both before the APRs were in place and afterward. Okay. So we're doing the camera stuff as well as the harvest analysis. The camera stuff, it takes a long time. I mean, you guys are probably like me, like to put out cameras and look through them and see what you got. Right. But dude, like the researchers that are doing this are going through like 800,000 images a year, just in the summer. So it's a lot of information to go through and then go forward and categorize everything like that, so it can be prepped for analysis. It takes time. It's a lot of work.
Hello, interns.
Well, talking about all this data, you referred to the dashboard being updated. You're going to have real-time data, hopefully, so to say. Is that something that the public is going to be able to access as well, with that are putting that data in?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll have a public facing, again, we call it a dashboard. Other people just might want to call it a website or whatever, but it's going to be integrated to real-time reporting. And this first year, I think I'm gonna be straight with you guys. It's just kind of like boring and not very sexy. It's basically like here's your county number of antler deer, number of antlerless deer, and that number is going to change. As you refresh the button every day, every couple hours, depending on how many deer are being submitted through the system. So it's, again, like I said, not very sexy. Right. Our goal is to build it up where we've got pie charts and figures and all sorts of stuff that like break things down by season. Type of antlerless deer that are being harvested, so you can dive into individual ones, individual counties, individual DMUs. I want to have a map that shows exactly where the hot spots where harvest is occurring, so you can compare between counties. We're not there yet. That's going to take time to build with some of the tech, people that are really good with that sort of stuff. But 100%, it will be available to the public for them to see how those numbers change throughout the season.
Well, I know we're talking about a lot about technology here. With even cameras, I remember talking with the guy who developed Deer Lab, which was taking trail cam photos and gleaning information
Jeremy.
off. Yeah, yep. And
he worked for me at Virginia.
Oh, did he? Okay. Well,
yeah, he's a good dude. I like Jeremy.
I talked with him for about a year and a half over that and was actually using it for a while. But, it would take weather data, something as simple as weather data, and corresponding it to where your location or your camera is. Do we ever foresee maybe at some point down the road, and this is me thinking completely out of the box, if we've got harvest data and we see a spike in maybe a certain week of data, or deer being taken or killed, whatever you want to call it, and we see a certain weather pattern or trend that came through, or maybe something leading up to that, a weather event, or maybe a decline. And will we be able to correlate the two together and maybe start putting some things together for hunters that way?
Maybe, when you start talking about like an analysis like that, you're really starting to look at you're building a lot of complexity into like what a model or analysis would look like. So, how many, we'd have to know how many people are like even hunting those days to see that. So I can tell you right now, like based on just last year's data, I can tell you exactly when the harvest spike is going to occur. It's going to be November 15th.
Right.
And it's not rocket science.
Right.
We're going to have a ton of people out there, and the number of deer that are killed on November 15th is going to dwarf anything that is taken during the Liberty hunt, the youth season, the early antlerless season, the first couple weeks of archery season. Like, it's not even going to come close to that one singular day. And man, if that November 15th falls on a Saturday, like, look out.
It's going
to be even higher. Yeah. So, that's the thing that, again, I'm not looking at your chat, and maybe nobody's talking about this, but I
just come up off the top of my head.
Yeah, but I get beat up all the time about like, oh my gosh, we have such long deer season. There's so many deer seasons. It's the firearm season is the one that people kill deer. Archery season is great, but nobody ever complains about like a long archery season. It's the firearm season is when we do our deer management. So even our muzzleloader season doesn't really put that many deer on the ground, especially even compared to like late antlerless, which is really only in the lower peninsula. So those are things that I hope that people see like recommendations and say, oh my gosh, this is gonna decimate the deer herd. This is gonna do so much. Like the one thing that I get a lot about is whether the universal antlerless license or the 10 limit per hunter. Like, I know what that data looks like, but a lot of times I haven't been able to show it, exactly in depth of like what the impact is. And that's what people get upset about, is the anticipated impact of a recommendation, because they see it and it seems like so over the top. And it might be, and it might sound like that, but in reality, like, the impact just isn't there.
Right. Like, you don't get the bang for your buck. Where people think it's the end of the world, you've taken what we've had and made it into brown it's down, and you just haven't gotten into that and whittled it away. Again, this is why we're having you on, to get this education out for the people.
We hear a lot of people talk about the $2 rule. A lot of other states have one, but we don't need a $2 rule. We're taking the herd out. And in reality, I think I'm just throwing the number out there because it's what sticks in my head. But isn't it like only 5% of that use that second tag on a second buck? Is that right?
About 5 or 6%. Yeah. It varies from year to year, but
okay.
It's obviously a small number. Now, you can crunch that 5% from, roughly about 600,000 hunters and try to like actually calculate how many second bucks are being taken, because of that. But honestly, Mike, that's one of the reasons why in the Lower Peninsula, we made that regulation change a couple years ago, where before, if you're hunting in like the firearm season, muzzleloader season, if you want to shoot a doe, you have to have that antlerless license with you.
Yeah.
In most of the state, but we switched it to basically being either sex, knowing that that's going to mean people are buying less antlerless licenses from us, which is going to hurt our bottom line, but it's going to have a management impact and value to it.
Yeah.
So now hunters are more likely to drop down to an antlerless deer, without spending extra money when they might have shot that spike, just because that's all they could have shot. So we're hoping that there's an age benefit for our bucks from that. And we've been seeing an increase in our antlerless harvest because of that, more so than going to like the universal antlerless license or the 10 does per person, which, only like a fraction of people ever buy that many anyway. It's going to try to balance our herd more. We can make a lot more hay with balancing our herd and managing our deer, trying to get people to go from 0 antlerless deer harvested to 1, rather than going from like 1 to 4 or 5 or 6. Like, people just don't do that.
I was thankful when you did that, when you made that tag available for us. I mean, I still buy the doe tag, so I buy 3 tags. I get the combo tag, and then I get my doe tag as well. But and I generally, on a good year, I've got 2 deer in the freezer. But if on that off chance, I'm able to take 2 doe and harvest a great buck, it's winter venison dinner.
Yeah. Right, exactly. One of the questions coming over the chat is, I'll read it to you, from Robert Miller. When you register your deer, does this give the freedom for the CO to come and investigate your kill? Everything was done legally. The reason I ask is several hunters have vented to me they don't like having to give a pinpoint accuracy when their deer was killed. So I think, I guess that's it. I guess he's asking, by registering your deer, does it give the CO
reason to investigate?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think what he's asking is basically, I think you said, Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically the CO to ground truth where the pin drop is, right? I mean, that's why I understand it. You got to understand, we have maybe 1 to 2 conservation officers, for a county, and some of them are spread out even more thin. I don't think they're going to have the luxury to go and actually verify pin drops at each location and say, oh no, this pin drop is not exactly where the tree stand was that I found, or the gut pile. So like, that's not something like I'm not a conservation officer, so I can't fully respond to this question, but I cannot foresee officers basically ground truthing or confirming that the pin drop is the exact location where the gut pile lays, or the ground blind, or the tree stand is located. There's too much other stuff.
I think really to look into that question. If it is reported, then the CO will do his investigation, and he could use that data to go do part of his investigation. For, like you said, with 1 to 2 per county, not so much. But if it's called out that Joe Schmo Hunter, I saw the buck he shot, he didn't shoot it where he said he did.
Yeah, he said it was in Mexico.
Yeah. Right. So
I can't imagine that's a starting point for any CO investigation.
Right. Exactly. I agree with you there, but I think if it's called out, he's got to do his investigation.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other question was, were those cameras on state land or on private land in those counties that you're doing the?
I think it's a mixture of both, but if it's private land, it was with permission. So every landowner that we've worked with gave us permission to put those cameras
on. So with your data that you're collecting, are you seeing what's the fluctuation of hunters? Are you seeing more hunters coming in? Like you said, 20 was a fluke because nobody else had anything else to do. But do you see us losing our hunting population? Are we gaining our hunting population? Different parts of the state, or don't you know?
We're losing. And
still losing.
Yep, still losing. And we're not any different than really any other state out there. So the rough numbers are, in 2000, like the year 2000, we had about 800,000 hunters in Michigan, and now we're sitting at less than 600,000. So from a deer hunter's perspective, we've lost probably almost 250,000 hunters in about a little over 20 years. That's, to put that into perspective, I used to manage, Indiana's deer herd. Like, they don't even have 250,000 deer hunters. So we've basically lost the state of Indiana from Michigan. And then what we do is we look at the age distribution of our hunters, basically, what they're reporting when they buy their license, how old they are, the birth dates and stuff. And if you were to look at a population diagram of like who's buying licenses, the highest peak occurs probably about the age 40, 50, 60 kind of time frame. And then it obviously drops down because you don't have many 70 or 80-year-old hunters that are out there. Few, but not many. So just fast forward that 10 to 15 years. And now, like, everybody that's kind of in their 60s is largely dropping out, probably a good chunk of the 50s that are dropping out. We don't have many hunters in the teens, 20s, 30s. It's certainly in that number to backfill what we currently have in that, sort of older generation. So if you were managing like a game species or like a wildlife species, and you had a lot more older individuals than younger individuals, you would anticipate like a population decline or a population crash. Hopefully that's intuitive for a lot of people to sort of, I'm trying to explain like an age bar graph over, and I don't know if it's working out so well, but anyway, so I think we're going to have to be understanding that, we're probably looking at close to 400 to 450,000 hunters probably by the year 2030, 2035, which is half of what we were in 2000. And hopefully we can sort of maintain that plateau from then on forward, but it's going to be tough. Like times just are kind of changing, and I don't know, it just seems like it's harder to get a younger generation involved with hunting, certainly more than it was when, you guys, me were, younger. It was a lot more commonplace to get involved.
Unfortunately, they've gotten, a lot of the younger crowd has gotten to the point of where, and obviously this isn't everyone, but it has to happen within 5 minutes or else I'm done.
Yeah, right.
Why didn't I see a deer and I've been out here 3 minutes?
Well, I'll tell you, we're running along here, but one more question for you and we'll wrap up the show. And I kind of want to wrap right back around to where we started, and it's going to be this question of how when you and I and Danny we talked about that inner 12-year-old child, first time out hunting, 14 for us here in Michigan at that time, and we get out there and we act like a kid. We should still be acting like a kid. We should perpetuate that to others to bring them into the hunting. Does the DNR have any ideas or plans on how to bring that to the people and encourage people to get out there? Or is there any plans to help bolster our numbers in the future? Do they have something set?
So there's a lot of work being done. I don't know if you guys have heard this concept of R3.
Yep.
So it's recruitment, retention, reactivation. To try to maintain some sort of momentum. Obviously, the recruit part is getting new hunters. The retain is keeping the hunters that you have. The reactivation is bringing back the hunters that used to hunt and have gone away. There's a lot of effort being placed on that, obviously within our agency, within the state, and outside of the state. And, the way that the winds are blowing right now is that it's actually really difficult and probably inefficient to put a lot of effort into working with youths. And hear me out, because youths don't have control of their schedule in most cases, True. If you're putting a lot of effort into trying to get a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old or whatever hooked on to hunting, they need a consistent mentor that's going to take them out and continue to sort of foster that passion. And if you can spark as much interest in a 10 or 12-year-old as much as you can, but if you're not doing the same for their sort of mentor or supervisor or parent, grandparent, whatever it is, you're not going to get that kid.
Right.
They're going to get into something else. So there's a lot more emphasis being now placed on, maybe younger adults and trying to get that, young professionals that maybe have never gone out before, or maybe grew up in sort of a rural household, maybe tried it and lapsed, and now they're sort of on their own, but they have more control over their time, as whether it's a young professional, someone in their 20s, 30s, whatever, just starting off on their path of life, trying to get them hooked. Because if you can get them hooked and they're younger, and then they're maybe bringing kids into the world too, they're more likely to continue that passion that you've gotten with them as a 20, 25-year-old, 30-year-old or whatever, and get their kid involved. So there's been a pivot and a shift in terms of the effort and the emphasis placed in recent years. I can't tell you that it's going to work. I feel like we've been talking about this for 20 years. We've seen this decline happening. Some of it's kind of like a tidal wave that's just sort of blowing through. And I don't know if a lot of this work, and I'm being honest here, is going to really shift the tide. But if you can sort of level what I'm going to call the turbulence in those waves a little bit, and it's certainly a noble effort worth doing. So, but that's kind of where things have been trending recently, the best of my knowledge.
Well, and too, I gotta suspect. I know that's who's got the disposable income.
Right.
The 10-year-old or 14-year-old kid who wants to get out there, he gets exactly. An allowance, maybe not. I don't know, but he's not going to be able to get all the equipment and afford gas to put in your car for you to take him. Or it boils down to the people who've got the money to be able to do it. and the access of time. You know, we always say access is key, but time is access as well. So
I think 2020 was the perfect example.
Yeah.
Why did we get a spike in hunter numbers when every other year before that we've seen a decline?
Because everybody was home.
The answer, everybody had time.
Yeah.
Literally everything was canceled. So it's like, well, shoot, I'm going to go out and hunt. I haven't done that in a long time.
Yeah.
So time is really key. And I don't know how you change society to give more people time, and I'm not saying going through another pandemic or whatever is the way to do that. But
all you can do is like you
prioritize.
said, like you said, is mentor. Maybe give somebody the opportunity to get out, get their feet wet as a young adult, and say, look, when you're out in the woods, this is what it's like, and it's not the fast-paced downtown city type, but it's just try it.
Yeah.
And if you like it, and then maybe that could come back and regenerate itself from 20s, 30s, that age group.
Well, we've seen it with our kids. I mean,
you
and I both brought all of our kids up in it. My 4 kids, they're busy now doing, finishing up school, college, and starting lives. And they're not out in the outdoors like nowhere near like what they were when they were younger with me, because I was their access. Same with you, Dan.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
But Chad, maybe you bring up a good point. Maybe our focus as hunters and outdoorsmen and women ought to be geared towards our friends, neighbors, people we know of our age and younger, and bringing them into the outdoors versus, I'm not saying I'm not going to take my grandkids out, but I'm saying, our main focus ought to be getting other people that don't have that immediate access and giving them that experience.
Exactly.
So
well
it's
said.
upon us. It's not all on the organizations and the DNR and the government. It's upon us as well. So.
It's on the parenting, the mentors, the people that can.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, it's been a great show. There's been a lot of questions, a lot we didn't get to, a lot that I had that we really didn't get to. But it's just there's a lot of information in this to unpack. The bottom line is, everybody, give this a chance. I've really been clamoring for this for years. I think it's a good idea. I know there's people that are skeptical, but let's everybody do their part. Let's see what comes out of this, and then if what we want to come out of this and what we think is going to come out of this, if it doesn't, then we can have that discussion at that time.
Yep, exactly. So. And maybe early next year we get Chad back on and he can give us a
update,
a live update as to how the season went.
Yeah.
And real quick, one question. As you were talking about this, in case of, I hope this doesn't happen, November 15th comes, and at 3:05 in the afternoon, you get an influx into the website
and it
or
crashes.
the app, and it crashes. Do you guys have a plan B?
I wish I could guarantee you that that's not going to happen, but I can't say that.
Okay,
that's always a possibility.
Right, it's your first year. We get it. This happened with the Total Archery Challenge that they had a new system in place. It looked like it was going to go great. They kicked it off, and within minutes, it was down. So, But you know what, Chad? It's been great having you on to explain this. Like you said, education on our part's key. We learned a lot of things tonight and some misnomers that were taken care of.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed talking with you. So anytime I can be available to you guys, if you have a question, don't hesitate to reach out.
We appreciate it. I tell you what, hang on. After we finish the show, we'll chat real quick and let you go. But for those of you that are listening to the podcast out there, if you're listening over on iTunes, go over to iTunes, give us a review over there. That helps us. It helps people who support us. For those of you who are here on the live stream, give us a like, follow, share the show. And if you're the podcast type that's not watching, make sure you catch that replay over on YouTube. When do you post that?
About the weekend, it'll pop up.
Okay, or pop in here on Facebook and give us a replay there as well. But we appreciate all the questions. We didn't get to them all tonight. A lot of good questions in there, and you guys just hang in there. We're all going to get through this.
We'll get through it. If you got any questions for Chad, feel free to contact us. We'll get a hold of Chad, get those questions answered for you. And
no, Tammy, we're not asking the 4 questions. We're running way long tonight. So we're going to wrap it up, and we'll be back again next week with...
Next week, we are having Derek Vaughn on from Sunrise. We're going to talk archery, less than a month out from October 1st. So
arrow builds?
We'll talk arrow builds. We'll take bow setups in general and everything above.
All right. That'll do it for us this week, folks. We'll see you back here again next Wednesday night, 7:30. Y'all take care.
This episode was brought to you by
PSC Archery,
Deer Camp Coffee,
Buck Baits,
JPO Game Calls,
The Island Armory,
Packer Max,
Sunrise Archery,
and C3 Better the Hunt technology.
Thanks for listening, and join us again here next week. Until then, remember, as we always like to say, if you're out on the water or in the woods, shoot straight and be safe. Until next week on the Up North Journal.